Hello everyone, it's Ending Credits here, back with another Shulker farming video. There's been a lot of stuff over the last couple of months that I've wanted to share with everyone, but none of which was enough to deserve its own video. Instead of focusing on just one thing, I thought I'd do a jumbo video and show off all the little things I found out recently about shulkers. I'll also be showing off the latest iteration of my scaffolding-based shulker farm, with rates of over 450 shells an hour, so stay tuned for that. So, without further ado, welcome to my shulker farming bits and bobs video. Before I get into the main part of the video, I just wanted to go over the interesting things that have been going on YouTube since my last video. By the way, I try to keep track of everything going on in the world of shulker farming, but there's still plenty of stuff that falls through my net, especially some smaller YouTubers. So if you think there's anything I'd be interested in, no matter how small it might be, please do let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to like. First off, a reimagination of my scaffolding-based shulker farm from a YouTuber who deserves a lot more attention, MineTheFab. MineTheFab is a true Minecraft generalist, but I especially love the videos like these where he takes a conventional farm design and just makes it much more practical. Having built my scaffolding-based farms multiple times in survival, I can tell you the most time-consuming part of the process is building up the breeding cell. MineTheFab's design significantly simplifies this, and hence makes the whole farm a lot easier to build. Of course, this comes at a cost of lower rates, but for many players this will be a worthwhile trade-off. Going from a smaller YouTuber to a much larger one, Ray's Works showed off a survival-friendly shulker reactor whose design was loosely based off the design of HF147. It's great to see the reactor concept going mainstream, and I think reactor designs are a practical option for many players. In fact, I've even come across this build on a server I play on myself. It was also great to see Ray giving time to HF147 to speak about his reactor design. HF has been doing a lot of work on shulker farming behind the scenes, and has helped me out a lot with many of the things in this video. Speaking of reactors, I came across this interesting take on EFO's original reactor design from a YouTuber called Spiral6. Instead of using a complicated redstone water stream system to move the player up and down, this design used minecarts, making the farm extremely simple. I really like the vertical reactor designs as they make drop collection really simple, and they can be extended upwards almost indefinitely. However, the main limitation at the moment is getting shulkers to aggro. Social aggro only extends 9 blocks above and below the targeted shulker, and snow golems will only target up to a certain number of blocks above themselves, which is why current vertical reactor designs use the player as an aggro target. Maybe someone in the future can find a way to do a vertical shulker reactor design that doesn't require the player. Finally, we end on a more cryptic note, with this YouTube short from Nembomb. Yes, this is the exciting news that Nembomb is joining the Mojang team. However, in the background of this clip, we can see a pulsating mass of pistons and slime blocks, and a bank of shulkers getting slowly picked up by minecarts and carried to their demise. This looks like some kind of shulker farm, but it's unlike any other farm I've seen. My best guess is that it is a single cell farm design which uses rows of sticky pistons in a sequence in order to flush shulkers to a given location. A similar design also shows up at the end of Nembomb's zombie reinforcement video. It looks like a really interesting design, and hopefully Nembomb will tell us more about this in a future video. And, on the off chance you're watching this video, Nembomb, I hope you're having a fantastic time in Sweden, and best of luck in your new role. Okay, now that we're up to date with what's been going on elsewhere, assuming nothing big comes along when I'm recording this video, let's move on to what I've been working on. One factor I didn't cover in my reactor mechanics video was how to optimize for hit rate. This is actually very important, as the overall drop rate of the reactor is proportional to the rate at which shulkers hit themselves. In fact, this is also true for single cell farms. Hence, it's important to understand how shulker bullet pathfinding works. Before I start the explanation, I just want to say thanks to HF147, who really did most of the work in this regard, and I'm mostly relaying what I've learned from him. Shulkers shoot on a random cooldown of between 1 to 6 seconds. Shulker bullets move in straight lines along the cardinal directions. A bullet will change direction whenever one of 3 different conditions is satisfied. The bullet is blocked by a solid block, the bullet moves in line with its target, or a random amount of time between 0.5 to 3 seconds has elapsed since the last change in direction. Interestingly, Shulker bullets define a solid block as any block with a solid top surface. This means that Shulker bullets are repelled by solid blocks, including transparent blocks, top slabs, and closed trapdoors. Bullets are not repelled by bottom slabs, soil sand, and honey blocks, to name a few. Scaffolding is a special case, as the surface can appear solid or non-solid depending on the entity's relative position. I wonder if this explains any other interesting Shulker phenomenon. In particular, scaffolding will let Shulker bullets, as well as any other projectiles, upwards through it, but it won't let them back down. In order to choose a new direction to move in, the bullet first checks if there are any air blocks adjacent to it in the direction of its target, and if so, it picks one at random as its new direction. If not, the bullet randomly samples an adjacent block at random. If that block is an air block, then the bullet will change direction in the direction of that chosen block. Otherwise, it will repeat this process up to 4 more times. If an adjacent air block isn't found after 5 trials, the bullet will just move in the direction of the last randomly chosen block. Every time a bullet changes direction, its random timer is reset, and a new timer is restarted with a value from 10 to 60 game ticks, which is 0.5 to 3 seconds. Despite the fact that bullets will instantly try to change direction if they see a block ahead of them, bullets have a little bit of momentum, meaning they can still occasionally crash into a solid block. Bullets will also crash into non-top solid blocks with collision hitboxes, making soil sand a good way of mopping up stray bullets. Additionally, due to the randomness in the direction selection code, the bullet can sometimes fail to change direction. If this happens, since the top solid block is still in the path of the bullet will continue trying to change direction every tick. This means that top solid blocks can be used to effectively constrain bullet paths, as bullets will almost always turn away when faced with a top solid block. Anyone who has worked with Shulker farms will know that bullets tend to like to bounce off the walls next to the snow golems. This is actually not explicitly programmed behaviour, but an inevitable consequence of the bullet's pathfinding mechanics. Bullets will always try to change direction when they move to the same x, y, or z coordinate as their target, as long as they are moving along the same corresponding axis. This means that for a bullet in line with its target, if it changes direction to a perpendicular direction, on the next game tick it will immediately try to change direction again. The bullet will keep attempting to change direction until it is moving either directly towards or away from its target. Knowing how bullets move can help us understand what makes a good reactor cell. HS cell design, which is also used in Ray's reactor, neatly constrains the bullets using solid blocks. It has the additional benefit of providing a large number of teleportable spaces, at 50% space efficiency. The big downside to this design is that it uses a lot of blocks, with 1 solid block for every air block. To try and make a more practical reactor design, I came up with this pattern. It has the same space efficiency as HF design, but for a quarter as many blocks. This comes at a downside though, as the water columns don't contain the bullets as effectively as HF design. A user of Ian's Discord, Hard, has been converting this concept into a minimalistic reactor setup, with the intention of making the simplest self-sustaining reactor possible. The farm isn't quite finished yet, but this latest iteration gets about 100 shells an hour. In general, designing efficient tileable cells, where drops can be collected easily, is really not that straightforward. These designs make use of large minecart collection systems, which have to be protected against stray bullets, or water stream collection systems. An alternative I explored in my last video on Shulker reactors was forcing Shulkers into a dedicated killing chamber. I did this by using the unstable nature of scaffolding to force Shulkers to teleport around until I found a spot in one of the chambers, a sort of shuffling-based reactor. Recently, I was inspired to try a similar design, but using columns of blocks pushed back and forth by pistons. While these blocks are moving, they become invalid spots for the shulkers, which are eventually forced to teleport into one of the killing chambers. This particular method of shulker instability was actually something suggested to me by HF147. By using a sugarcane tiling of columns, we can get a large number of teleported spaces, making the farm more efficient and compact. However, this comes at a downside of increased server lag, as many blocks are being moved around by pistons. I originally made this as a proof of concept, but having seen it in action, I think this actually works as a budget shulker reactor, and there are a definite number of improvements that could be made to make it even more effective in future. I won't be doing a tutorial on this design, however, I will include a link to it in the description if you're interested in having a look at it yourself. As well as reactors, bullet dynamics can also be useful for single cell farms. While most single cell designs use very simple bullet chambers that tightly constrain the bullets, there are some areas where forcing bullets into certain locations can be useful. In my first video, I showed off a technique to boost the rates of my scaffolding-based shulker farm, which I called the Shulker Supercharger. The supercharger makes use of a bank of external shulkers to shoot additional shulker bullets and increase the frequency that the breeding shulker is hit by a bullet. A downside to this approach, which is that it required a lot of extra blocks, and occasionally shulkers in the supercharger would die. Making use of our newfound knowledge of bullet pathfinding, we can construct a millimetric containment system which doesn't put any of the supercharger shulkers at risk. Another problem with running a supercharger, and also a general issue for single-cell shulker farms, is how to prevent bullets from hitting the shulker while it's still closed, as these just damage the shulker without any chance of it duplicating. It turns out there are a few different ways to achieve this. The first of these comes from ENX04's Metallurgia concept, which uses a piece of scaffolding above the shulker, preventing bullets from hitting the shulker unless it is fully open. The downside to this design is that it only works for shulkers facing upwards, and because scaffolding has a solid top surface, some of the time, the scaffolding tends to repel bullets, meaning a water stream is needed to give bullets enough momentum to crash into the scaffolding before they can turn around. A similar concept is to use lava, which can be placed in a few different orientations and doesn't repel bullets. However, lava will also delete any bullets shot by the breeding shulker, making it complicated to get a supercharged farm started. Plus, it can often be difficult to get the shulker and lava into a nice configuration, as the lava tends to want to flow into the space occupied by the shulker. Finally, a bit of a cop-out, but simply positioning the shulker outside the direct line of fire of the bullet streams can be an effective method in its own right. This can be coupled with a simple redstone contraption to open a trapdoor when a shulker peaks. While it might not look like the closed trapdoor would stop any bullets, since the bullet sees it as a solid block due to its solid top surface, it is very effective at forcing bullets to turn around, which has the advantage of preserving bullets for reuse within the bullet stream. This offset method is the key to the latest iteration of my supercharged scaffolding shulker farm. At max rates, the farm produces about 470 shells per hour, which is approaching the rates that the current best single-cell portal-based farms can achieve, which is about 540 shells an hour. Shulkers in the supercharger are produced automatically as the farm runs. As shulkers produced by the farm find their ways into the shooting cells. It takes about 2 to 3 hours for the farm to reach its max rates after a cold start. The farm is designed to be run continuously. However, the shulkers in the supercharger can be flashed back into the farm, for example for maintenance purposes. This can also be used to reseed the farm if all the backup shulkers somehow die, which happened on a server I play on due to someone aggroing the shulkers in the backup chamber. The farm can also be run with the supercharger disabled. In fact, even with the supercharger disabled, it gets better rates than my previous unsupercharged design, at about 190 shells per hour. An important aspect in getting this farm to work was getting the shulker to sit upside down in the chamber. Minecarts can only eject shulkers onto a solid block, so the shulker cannot be directly ejected into the chamber from a minecart. Instead, they had to be pushed in via a piston. In this case, I used a detector rail to temporarily retract a piston while a minecart ejects a shulker. The piston then extends, pushing the shulker into the chamber. However, pushing shulkers with pistons is not always straightforward, and it required a bit of playing around before I was able to work out how to do it effectively. Shulkers can be pushed by pistons, much like they were any other block. Pistons can push a shulker as long as any part of the shulker hitbox extends into a block in front of a block being pushed. This includes the top part of a peaking shulker's shell. Pistons won't push a shulker if its hitbox is blocked from moving by another block. Again, this also includes the top of any open shulkers. It's important to remember that pistons, and any blocks being pulled or pushed by piston, are temporarily in an invalid state both before and after the shulker is moved. This means that there needs to be a valid, non-moving spot for the shulker to sit on before and after it's been moved. Otherwise, there is a chance it can teleport away. For my breeding cell design, this meant that I needed to have a block for the shulker to sit on after the piston had extended, but before the shulker had been pushed. The simple solution was to allow the shulker to sit on the side of this glass block here, and extend its head into this lava. I also needed to place a block over its head, to ensure that it couldn't sit upright, as opening its shell at an inopportune moment would prevent it from being pushed. One of the reasons I stuck with the pressure plate and offset shulker design for my revised supercharged farm is it provides an easy way to detect if shulker is still in the farm. Traditionally, there are two main methods for detecting shulker presence: detecting golems firing snowballs and pressure plates. However, detecting snowballs is often complicated and usually constrains where the snow golems can be placed. Where possible, I tend to prefer pressure plates, but having to have a pressure plate opposite the shulker can be limiting. Just as a side note, I use stone pressure plates here, as this avoids the awkward situation where a shulker dies in the breeding cell and drops a shell which lands on the pressure plate. An interesting concept has come out of the Chinese-speaking Minecraft community, with Bilibili user Mhe Gunhua, is the use of pufferfish detection systems for detecting shulker presence. These can be used for both presence detection and also aggro detection, although it is possibly a bit too unresponsive for most aggro detection purposes. Another interesting idea is this design from Discord user Hard, which uses a minecart placed on a shulker's head. Unfortunately, this can't be used with either of the protection systems described above, but it is a very neat concept that almost certainly has a use somewhere. So, overall, I'm pretty pleased with how this farm is working. Chasing down portal farm rates with a similarly sized single dimension farm is no mean feat. But wait, is 540 shells an hour really all a single cell portal farm is capable of? There's absolutely nothing stopping us applying the supercharging trick to a portal-based farm. This is exactly what Hard has been working on, who has very kindly allowed me to show a sneak peek of his adaptation of ENX04's shulker farm. With the addition of a shulker supercharger, the farm is able to go from rates of about 300 shells an hour to around 800 shells an hour. The rates appear to be largely limited by how quickly the shulker can be aggroed. That is, shulkers duplicate basically instantly after opening. In theory, there is no reason that our scaffolding-based farm can't achieve in similar rates, though we do need to take into account this time spent restocking shulkers. In practice, this remains to be seen. There is certainly a lot more work to be done in this area. With the release of 1.18, it's amazing to think that shulker farming was only made possible back in June this year with the release of 1.17. There's been so much amazing work done on this by so many members of the Minecraft community, and I know there's a lot more still to come. And I'm really interested to see what people come up with. Unfortunately, that's it from me for this video, so until next time, bye bye!